There is one line that ought to open any conversation about the Emperor of mankind. Nobody says it aloud. Robert Gilliman thinks it in the 41st millennium, 10,000 years after the whole thing was finished, settled, and long past mending. The Emperor loves no one man. He cannot afford affection. He did not love his sons. He does not love men, but he does love mankind. Everything rests on that distinction. Men and mankind. It runs through his life, through every one of his deeds, through every victory and every catastrophe he authored. Mankind as an idea, as a species, as a single whole, that he loved without limit. Almost no one as a man. This is the second lecture in the series. The first was a survey. Who the Emperor was, where he came from, and what he wanted. This one goes narrower, and I'll be honest, harder. His relationship with his sons, his relationship with humanity, and his motives, the ones he stated and the ones he kept to himself. A word on scope, as always. This is Warhammer 30,000, the Horus Heresy. The 40K setting is a different animal, and it contradicts 30K often enough, as does the wargame. They are, in effect, separate universes, and the story in each one differs. Where I step outside that frame, I'll say so. As I just did, that opening line is from Dark Imperium, and Dark Imperium is 40K. The question all of this serves is a simple one. What was he? A hero and a visionary, or a tyrant and a murderer? 1. The scale of him. As I said in the previous lecture, the Emperor is the strongest psyker in the setting, stronger than the seers of the Eldar. This will surprise some of you. The light of the Astronomicon is the Emperor's own light. It is merely amplified and directed by the ancient technology of the beacon. And the Emperor himself can serve as that kind of beacon for ships running the warp. As to how strong he is, the gods of chaos are afraid of him. However badly they wanted him destroyed, whatever challenges they threw at him, they feared him. The proof of it, at minimum, is a conversation between Mortarion, by then a demon prince of Norgul, and Kaugath. In that exchange, Kaugath is genuinely appalled at the thought that the Emperor, already on the Golden Throne by that point, is not simply sitting there. He is gathering strength, accumulating psychic power. Neither of them doubts it for a moment. With the Eldar, the position is two-sided. On the one hand, they hold humanity in contempt as a species. On the other, they are plainly afraid of the Emperor dying, because they believe his death would open a second eye of terror in the segmentum solar. His psychic potential is extraordinary, simply exceptional. There is also a curious suggestion that the Emperor can summon the soul of any being that fought and died with his name on its lips, even the soul of Pharaohs, which implies that, contrary to the common assumption, souls do not simply dissolve into the warp, and that the Emperor can interact with them somehow, perhaps command them, not merely guide, command. The analogy with Odin is obvious. Asgard, the host of the dead, which in later medieval European folklore took the shape of the Wild Hunt. And not only in The Witcher, thanks to the game, everyone knows what the Wild Hunt is. In the folklore, it meant an army of the dead. There were no spectral elves in it. Those were invented by Mr. Sapkowski. 2. The Emperor and humanity. The Emperor's position on humanity as a whole is plain, and it is written into the imperial truth. Man stands above any Xenos, a priori. And given that the Eldar, for instance, created Slaanesh, while humanity created nobody, the notion has a certain merit. though it does reek of the crudest kind of nationalism. His ultimate goal, as I covered last time, was the unification of every human world and the subjugation of every other species in the galaxy. Total imperial dominance, with no external enemies left standing. Whether he knew about extragalactic threats, the Tyranids for one, we cannot say. About the Necrons he certainly knew. As for the methods he used to get there, we should start with the gene craft, which by any moral standard is indefensible. The Custodians came first, then the Thunder Warriors, then the Adeptus Astartes. All of them tools, and tools he disposed of readily enough when he needed to, as the Thunder Warriors demonstrate. Then, there are the two primarchs who were, let us say, conditionally executed, and whom their father apparently did not grieve over much. He never so much as mentioned them. More than that, the Emperor stated outright that Ferus Manus was sacrificed because it was the correct decision in the opening phase of the war. The decision being to let Horus feel he had the upper hand. And, taken as a whole, the Emperor's rule ultimately produced a human death toll greater than that of every recorded dictator in history combined, which is before we account for the fact that a good many of those dictators, Hammurabi, Alexander, Napoleon, as I discussed last time, were the Emperor. During the Unification Wars, he ground entire regions and whole civilizations into dust. He destroyed a technologically advanced city-state in Antarctica that never even fought him. It simply refused to give up its religion. In fairness, though, it is worth allowing that there may have been no other road. And I want to stress this. The Emperor did make humanity the dominant species in the galaxy, and he did it in 200 years. 5 or 6 generations. On a galactic scale, that is nothing at all. And the whole of his wisdom as a ruler is probably contained in a single line. It is not my Imperium. It is humanity's. 3. The Emperor and his sons. There are a great many opinions here. To me, it all looks reasonably clear. In The Master of Mankind, the Emperor tells Arkan Land, the techno-archaeologist, or whatever the correct form of his title is, that the primarchs are functional instruments, and that it is natural for them to regard their maker as a father. And then he adds that he is not, in any full sense, their father. The same motif surfaces again elsewhere, and Guilliman puts it harder. The Emperor allowed them to love him, and allowed them to believe he loved them back. He did not. His primarchs were weapons, and that was all. Even so, I think it is wrong to conclude that the Emperor would certainly have destroyed the primarchs once the Great Crusade ended. Too much had been invested in them to assume there would be no use for them afterwards. Guilliman was a magnificent administrator. He brought 500 worlds into Ultramar, which is a record among the primarchs, and he built the largest legion of them all. And, as I mentioned last time, the Emperor had a very specific plan for Magnus, the Golden Throne, which suggests there may well have been a plan for each of them. We also know he ordered 20 particular chambers built in the palace on Terra, 1, presumably, for each son. And returning to that conversation with Arkan Land, the Emperor compares the primarchs to wooden boys, bound by powerful feeling to the one who carved them. So we know for a fact that he regarded the primarchs as tools. Whether he also regarded them as sons is a much harder question. Probably, in my view, yes, but only to a degree. And in any case, he was prepared to spend any one of them at any moment if it profited humanity. Humanity itself as an abstraction, he loved without reservation, with his whole soul, and with every soul, if you remember the legend of the shamans. 4. what the authors say. The bulk of what we know about the Emperor comes from one book, The Master of Mankind, by Aaron Dembski-Bowden. At that book's launch, Dembski-Bowden said that not one word the Emperor speaks in it can be taken at face value. But he immediately qualified it. The Emperor is not lying. He is arranging and rearranging the facts into whatever shape best serves the moment. And bear in mind what we are dealing with: a being, a man, 38,000 years old, who has steered the whole of Terra's history. He does not think as we think. He does not speak as we speak. Dembski-Bowden points to a detail that almost every reader missed. Speaking to Arkan Land, speaking to his custodians, the Emperor refers to the primarchs in one of two ways: by the primarch's number and the legion's number, or as it. That is what he calls them. But at the end of the book, when he speaks of Horus, he does not say it. He says he. Dembski-Bowden also drew attention to Malcador, First Lord of the Imperium, the audio drama, by L.J. Goulding. It is interesting because Malcador confirms there that the primarchs were instruments of conquest and nothing more. And he says something else, that the Emperor deliberately provoked rivalry between the primarchs in order to destroy them in the end. But later in the story, he admits he was lying at that moment, without explaining why. So the plan people like to talk about, the plan to set the primarchs against each other, probably never existed. Malcador was most likely covering for the fact that everything had already gone to hell. The other thing worth recalling here is Gav Thorpe's short story, The Board is Set, in which Malcador and the Emperor play a rather pointed game of regicide. Malcador plays Horus. The Emperor plays humanity. And between them, they play out, in miniature, the exact shape of the Horus Heresy, long before it happens. Which brings us to the question of whether he knew. I deliberately left that out of this lecture. It is an enormous question, with an enormous body of material behind it, and it deserves its own. 5. The Golden Throne. Last time I said it was unclear why Dorn chose to place his mortally wounded father on the Golden Throne. Since then, I have gone back through the Master of Mankind rather more carefully, and the Praetorian's reasoning makes sense to me now. It may even have been a direct order from his father, because at the end of the Master of Mankind, the Emperor, in full health before the duel with Horus, sits on the Golden Throne himself. It is not yet finished, not yet properly tuned. He sits on it to hold back the demons, closing on the Custodian and Mechanicum forces, retreating out of the webway. That episode has spawned a substantial theory that the Emperor on the Golden Throne is not sitting there at all. He is holding Terra, possibly the whole galaxy, against a large-scale breach of the warp into real space. Which returns us to the Eldar and their conviction that if he truly dies, we get a second Eye of Terror. As of 40,000, and this is strictly speaking, no longer 30,000, nobody knows what condition the Emperor on the Golden Throne is actually in. Even so, when Guilliman is brought out of stasis and approaches the throne, he feels, and I am quoting, that he is being studied like an instrument. He senses a presence. He senses something acting on him from the other side. The forces of chaos, meanwhile, have no doubt whatsoever that the Emperor is alive and well. In that same exchange between Mortarion and Kugath, it is stated plainly that the Emperor sits there, gathering psychic power. Their only question is what he intends to do with it. There is also a rather nice theory that even in his present state, the Emperor could speak to anyone he chose, given the scale of his gift, and that he does not, because his pure psychic voice, unmediated by a human larynx, would obliterate whoever heard it on the spot. None of this is supported by anything. But, as they say, I want to believe. 6. The Heresy of the Early Editions. There is another version worth your time. In the earliest editions of the wargame, again, a slightly different universe, but bear with me, the primarchs were immensely powerful psychers, and the warp had nothing to do with them. The Emperor made them from his own genetic material alone, with no recourse to the knowledge of chaos. The differences between them, in that telling, came from the warp's influence at the moment they were scattered. The first edition also says something else. I am not deeply read in it, but preparing this lecture I came across a rather striking detail. The duel between Horus and the Emperor went differently. The Emperor did not free Horus from the grip of chaos. Horus freed himself, and in effect, threw himself onto his father's blade, which gave rise to a theory that Horus might have survived that duel altogether, and that the corpse Dorn set upon the throne was not the Emperor at all. It was Horus, in which case, as of 40,000, the whole of humanity kneels not to the god Emperor, but to a beloved son, a traitor primarch, sitting on the golden throne. What became of the Emperor himself is obviously another question entirely. I find the version fascinating. It is also supported by nothing beyond those early editions. 7. The Emperor's Mistakes. The state itself. The most obvious problem with the Imperium is that it is an ultra-militarized society, wholly dependent on military expansion. Had the Great Crusade gone exactly to plan, humanity would eventually have run out of enemies. And at the end of it, the Emperor would have been holding a multi-trillion-strong army of soldiers who knew nothing but killing and had abruptly become unemployed. I am talking about the Imperial Guard. And then there are the Adeptus Astartes, on top of that, the most efficient killers in the galaxy. Obviously, the Ultramarines and the Salamanders would have found a place in the New World without difficulty. But for the likes of the Space Wolves, the Warhounds, and the Death Guard, it might have been a genuine problem. And he had faced this problem before. The Thunder Warriors were exterminated once they stopped being necessary, because fighting was the only thing they could do. In The Outcast Dead, we meet the last of them. So either he failed to learn from it, or he had some plan, because surely he could not have exterminated an entire army, his whole army, although he could, which is why I would not quite call this a mistake. He may well have had something in mind. It is arguable. Loving humanity blindly. What is not arguable, to my mind, is this. The Emperor loved humanity, and he loved it blindly. He never noticed that what makes a man is precisely not the unquestioning obedience he demanded. It is natural for a human being to look in any situation for his own road. The clearest example of this is the Interrex, whom the Luna Wolves encounter as early as Horus Rising, the very first book. A human civilization, lost during the long night. Technologically advanced, probably more advanced than the Imperium at that point. They knew about chaos, which the Imperium did not, and they had developed effective methods of their own for dealing with it. And it is from them that E.H. Rebus steals the Anatheme, the blade he later uses to make a traitor of Horus. They achieved all of that without the Imperial truth. But their position did not suit the Emperor. He held that he alone knew how things ought to be done, that any disobedience must be punished, and that any mode of thought not sanctioned by the Imperial truth must be rooted out. From a strategic standpoint, that may look logical enough. You cannot chop wood without the chips flying. But there is no argument for calling the strategy humane. The vacuum where faith should be. This may be the central mistake. The emperor removed religion from society as an institution and put nothing in its place. The imperial truth offered no universals, not even secular ones, which might have solved the problem. Because an ordinary man, who is not the emperor, who has no extraordinary psychic gift, who is not even an Astartes, an ordinary man goes looking for some larger meaning, some idea above the world. A human being needs something to believe in, and the humanism and the logic underpinning the imperial truth are too abstract for him. They give him nothing to stand on, particularly since, as we have just seen, there was no humanism in the practice of it whatsoever. That vacuum explains very neatly why the imperial cult rose and gathered force the moment the heresy was over. Hiding chaos. Hand in hand with that goes another mistake. The emperor concealed the true nature of demons from everyone, with the possible exception of Malcador. Early on, he classified them, publicly, as simply another xenospecies. His motive is clear enough. He was trying to protect mortals and primarchs alike. It was still a mistake, because in refusing to explain their transcendent, supernatural origin, he left everyone defenseless before the warp. And again, one can attempt not to excuse, but to explain his position. He was betting on the webway, on removing the warp from the equation entirely. The webway and the confidence. Which is an interesting move for a man trying to avoid the fate of the Eldar. The Emperor was, let us be honest about it, an absolute nationalist of the crudest sort. The idea of humanity's total supremacy over other species probably grows from the same root as the contempt the Eldar hold for every other people in the galaxy today. And nobody could accuse him of lacking confidence. He demonstrated that with the Webway project. The idea in itself, interstellar travel and interstellar communication without the warp as an intermediary, is a magnificent one, a genuinely bright idea. But the Emperor did not know how the Webway worked, not remotely, and he admits as much himself, particularly as we later learn that demons had been seeping into the Webway long before Magnus put his foot through it. Just not in those numbers. Nobody knew anything about the Webway, not even the Eldar. The only ones who understood it were the Old Ones, the makers of the Eldar, the enemies of the Catan. And by 30,000, the Old Ones were long dead. They are simply gone. The great misapprehension. The Emperor's greatest error, though, lies elsewhere. To my mind, it is this. He never allowed for the possibility that his sons might have ideas and desires that were not his own. Having made them transhuman, he forgot that the prefix is trans, but the root is human. They remain human. We see it perfectly well in how they quarrel with each other and in how energetically they get things wrong. To put it plainly, a brilliant strategist, a visionary, a legendary warrior and leader, the Emperor was nonetheless a very poor father. And if that did not cause the heresy outright, it certainly accounts for the fall of a great many primarchs. 8. Fathers and sons. Lorgar. The Emperor's largest single mistake is obvious enough. Lorgar, the only one of his sons who loved his father, absolutely. He loved him enough to worship him and to make other peoples worship him. He raised monuments to him in solid gold, hundreds of meters high. He built whole cities in his name, and he never lied about any of it, never concealed anything, was never a rebellious son. He was entirely sincere from beginning to end. Above all, he was sincere in his love for the Emperor, which is worth pinning down precisely. For the Emperor, not for humanity, and not for the Imperium. Those he did not actually care about at all. And here is the interesting part. For more than a century of the Great Crusade, the Emperor knew exactly what Lorgar was doing. He knew Lorgar was violating the imperial truth directly by declaring his father a god, and he did nothing about it. He never gave Lorgar so much as a hint of displeasure. And then, out of nowhere, and we know this story well from the first heretic, the Emperor arrives with the Ultramarines at one of Lorgar's worlds and burns his most beautiful city, Monarchia, in nuclear fire. He assembles every warrior Lorgar has, the whole legion, orders them onto their knees before himself and before the Ultramarines, and tells Lorgar that he alone among his brothers has failed. He alone did not live up to what was expected of him. To call it what it is. In front of the entire galaxy, the Emperor puts his most devoted son face down in the dirt and makes him swallow it. The fact that Lorgar, who is, remember, an intensely emotional creature, did not kill himself on the spot and did not raise the heresy on the spot, but merely cracked Guilliman's breastplate with a single blow of his Chaerozeus, tells you he was a being of formidable will. And as we learn later, even as a demon prince, even having accepted the gifts of chaos, he certainly never obeyed it. You can see it clearly enough in Slaves to Darkness. He had his own plans, and he wanted Horus's place. So yes, to some degree he was working to a design drawn up by Zinc and the rest of that cheerful crowd, but his motives were always his own. Angron. With Angron, it is more obvious still. The Emperor could plainly have prevented him dying on New Ciariu when he came into orbit, which is what Angron wanted at the time. Everyone asks this question, and it has no answer. He could have taken Angron along with his brothers, teleported the lot of them off the planet and onto a ship. Better still, he could have made planetfall, landed a contingent of space marines, and brought New Ciariu to heel in a matter of days. Weeks at the outside. There was no standing army on New Ciariu. There were no external enemies. The planet was united. It would have been the logical thing to do. Instead, he teleports up exactly one man and leaves Angron's warriors, Angron's brothers, to die. And in doing so, he inflicts a colossal psychological injury on a primarch who was already unstable. He then went on to study the butcher's nails personally. He knew what they were doing to Angron. He knew they were killing him. And not only killing him, but driving him genuinely mad, causing him physical pain in every cell of his body, physical and psychological. Every waking moment he was not in combat, which raises the question of how wise it was to hand such a creature command of 100,000, give or take whatever the number was, of the most efficient killers in the galaxy, particularly since Angron refused command of the Legion for as long as he could. He did not want to fight at all, and the Emperor insisted anyway. Fulgrim. Fulgrim's fall is, I would say, directly the Emperor's fault. I have mentioned the error already. He simply did not warn his sons about the dangers of the warp and did not teach them to resist corruption. Had he told them anything at all, had Fulgrim known what he was dealing with on Lair, he would never have picked up the Lair blade, which in the end drank his soul and replaced it with a demon's. Magnus's fall follows directly from the same error. Had the Emperor brought the Lord of Prospero into his great work, had he told him about the plan to seat him on the golden throne, things would obviously have gone otherwise. He would never have thrown in with Horus, and none of that murky business with the wolves would have happened. The shattering of his soul, all but one shard of it. Mortarion. A situation much like Angron's. The Emperor simply forbade Mortarion from killing his adoptive father and gave no reason for it whatsoever. Curze. I have covered Curze in detail in an earlier lecture. This is probably the Emperor's most tragic mistake. The Emperor, the greatest psyker in the galaxy, could not possibly have failed to notice that his son was going mad from a gift he could not control. Curze, meanwhile, was very likely one of the strongest seers among them. In that respect, he may have come close to his father. He foresaw the heresy, at the very least. Whether the Emperor knew the heresy was coming, we cannot say for certain. Theoretically, he did. But Curze was clearly stronger than Sanguinius. Against Magnus, it is arguable, and it is obvious that the Night Haunter would never have fought. His father had that father taught him to control what he had been given. Though there is another side to this. The Emperor cannot have been unaware that the Night Lord's Legion as a whole was recruited from outright degenerates, maniacs, murderers, and rapists, which raises the question of why he allowed such a legion to exist at all. The usual defense is that they were executioners, specialists in punitive work. But anyone who has read the Horus Heresy knows perfectly well that the wolves and Sanguinius's angels handled that work superbly without being moral grotesques. I am not saying every Night Lord was a monster. There is Talos Valkyrin, at minimum. Sirion, his companion, was not a good man, but there were entirely decent people among them. They lived in a brutal world and they made brutal mistakes, but they did not become maniacs. They did not make the indiscriminate slaughter of human beings an end in itself. Perturabo. The problem with Perturabo, again, comes down to the Emperor being miserly. Not with knowledge, this time. With feeling. He concealed his reasoning from Perturabo, never even attempted to explain it. Specifically, why he sent the poor man to the literal back end of the galaxy to fight the HROOD. We understand the reason well enough now. He never told Perturabo. And to Perturabo, as to everyone else, his rivalry with Dorn simply looked like favoritism. Dorn was the chosen one. Perturabo was the fellow scrabbling about somewhere off in the dark. Horus. Horus's fall, to my mind, depended on the Emperor's actions rather less than the others did. Because you have to understand Horus's real motives. He fell because he was afraid of failing to live up to the title of War Master. On top of which, the gods of chaos, on Daven's moon, planted the seed of doubt in him about what would become of the primarchs and the Adeptus Astartes once the Great Crusade was finished. They made it fairly plain that the answer was nothing good. If the Emperor, and I am modeling here, had sat down with Horus and talked to him properly, told him everything, put his son's mind at rest, it might well have gone differently. But the Master of Mankind was then, as always, entirely certain that his actions required no explanation. The Loyalists. And the Loyalists, incidentally, are not much better. Jaghatai Khan remained loyal essentially because he saw the Imperium as the lesser evil. Guilliman was always self-sufficient, which is why he stood up Imperium Secundus so quickly. He could have existed independently of the lot of them. When Imperium Secundus was being built with the Ruinstorm raging, He was certain of nothing at all, but he did not indulge the despair for long. He built it, and he got on with it. 9. In summary. Summing up, I cannot avoid the point that the Emperor, for all his superiority over the representatives of any other species, remained a man. He was not perfect, he was not complete, and he was wrong, often and about a great deal, as any man is. We should also remember that he was eternal, and that he understood he had no right to become attached to mortals, not even to transhumans, because, and you will grant me this, that is the humane position. You do not attach yourself to someone you are guaranteed to outlive, or to someone you may have to throw into the fire at any moment for the good of everyone else. And still, the Emperor's central problem was this: loving humanity with his whole soul. He did not love the individual human beings who composed it. He saw them as instruments, as the means to his design. So, summing all of it up, he did not want to become part of the world of men. He was never part of the world he himself had built. He was always somewhere above it. Yes, in the first decade of the Crusade, he was at the front, fighting. But he was not running the Imperium. Malcador ran it, and Dorn, and the others, and it suited him perfectly well to remain above everyone, outside the comprehension of mortals, which is faintly ironic, because that is precisely how a god behaves, and the Emperor flatly denied that he was divine, or that he had been sent for any purpose at all. Thank you for listening to the very end. If this deep dive was worth your time, drop a like and subscribe. There is far more of the Long War still to explore. Until next time. Transmission ends. The Emperor protects.